Hey, I'm Dustin Glassner. I live out here in Berkeley, California. I'm originally from Jersey by way of Washington, D.C. I've been climbing for a little over 4 years now. And it's been an interesting journey. So right now I'm a sponsored and competitive climber, sponsored by Evolve and by Scratch Labs, a hydration company out of Boulder, Colorado. Man, yeah, climbing's been probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's an incredible sport, an incredible community, and it came into my life during a really interesting time, some very formative years towards the end of college, I guess. There's a whole lot of change going on for me, big moves, big changes from, I guess from undergrad to grad school, but going from small town Virginia to big city Washington, D.C., huge changes, going through a breakup, really tough breakup, and I kind of just stumbled into climbing. It was always something that I wanted to do, something I was always interested in, but never really explored it. So yeah, when I found it, it was something that really spoke to me in a way that nothing else really had. I'm the kind of person that, I guess you could say I have a bit of like an addictive personality. I don't know. I get really into some things. I'll get really into them for a brief period of time, but I kind of flame out on them. But climbing's something that's stuck, My parents are always like, he'll grow out of it eventually, he'll grow out of it eventually, he'll grow out of it eventually. And, I never really did. I just got more and more into it the further into it I got. And in D.C., really, that's where everything kind of clicked. I started climbing at Earth Treks Climbing Center in Rockville, Maryland. Met some incredible people and a really strong climbing community that you wouldn't expect in a place that is so far from any really quality rock. I met people who were super psyched on trad, on sport, on bouldering. I met youth competitors who were crushing. I met people who were, in their 60s, who have been climbing for decades, still, cruising, crushing in the gym. And all these people had such an impact on me, not only as a climber, but also as a person. And when I started working at Earth Treks, I really wanted to give back to that community. I wanted to give something back to the people that climbed there, that worked there. So I started teaching classes. I started coaching some of the younger kids. It was just an incredible experience, an absolutely incredible experience. And obviously also I started climbing a lot. I started training a ton, started getting actually good, actually strong, not just a little Gumby. And at some point I just realized climbing is something I wanted to do for the rest of my life, hopefully. Hopefully I'm climbing for as long as I'm able to move. I mean, I don't care if I'm cruising on 5'1" top rope when I'm 80 years old. Doesn't matter. If I'm pulling on something, I'm gonna be super psyched. Yeah, so I got the opportunity to move out here to Berkeley for a PhD program, actually. So I go to school at the university here at California, Berkeley, studying infectious diseases, and that's been a really interesting experience. It's been a really good one, really positive, but I'd be lying if I told you that climbing didn't play a role in my decision to come out here. It's a great school, great academic program, but I came out here because I could climb, because I knew people here, I knew the climbing community, I knew this was an incredible place to be involved in the outdoors. So that's a big part of what drew me out here, and since then I've been getting outside so much more than I was in DC. Even just places like this. So we're sitting at Mortar Rock in Berkeley right now. It's about 2 miles from the university, and this is a little local bouldering area, and Chris Sharma, when he was a teenager, put up a ton of hard stuff here. There's a ton of history just at this little rock, and I'm able to get here pretty frequently because it's so close to school, and that's a really powerful and really incredible aspect of living here in Berkeley. But my climbing, my experiences have continued to be amazing out here in California. But I guess if I'm going to tell a story, I guess it'll be maybe a little bit of a serious one, a little bit of a sombering one, maybe a bit of a cautionary tale as well. So I really love Bishop, California. It's one of my favorite areas to climb. Definitely my favorite area in California. And I was down there President's Day 2014. For a long weekend. I was down there with a couple strong local crushers, and we were out there for a bouldering trip. And I knew I had a handful of friends down there that weekend as well, and a lot of them were going to be climbing at Owens River Gorge, which is a sport climbing area, maybe 20 minutes from Bishop. and we're finishing up our trip and we're driving out of Bishop on Monday, and one of my friends in the car with me is like, "Oh, snap. Did you hear there was like a serious accident in the gorge this week?" And I'm like, "Man, that's crazy. I really hope it's no one I know." And that's like the first thought that comes into my head. But we're driving out of Bishop and we're coming back towards Berkeley. I don't hear anything from anybody. No text. There's nothing on Facebook. So I figure, all right, everything's probably all right. I don't think it was anyone I knew. I asked some other friends who had been roping that same weekend if they heard anything, and they hadn't heard anything. So I get back to Berkeley. I remember I'm walking across campus, getting ready to going from one class to another, and I run into one of my friends, and he just has this like really just like down look on his face. He just looks really, really upset, and I'm like, "Hey man, like how was the weekend? Like, did you have a good trip?" He's like, "It was all right, man. Like, did you hear this person like got into a pretty bad accident?" And like as soon as I saw him, I kind of had this idea in the back of my head that someone probably I probably knew the person that got hurt in the gorge. So, you know, looking for information online is always hard, especially in like a place like Owens where there's not like a huge like online community around it. So I went to the only place I could think of where I may be able to find some information. That was Reddit. So I went onto the climbing subreddit. I don't really Reddit, but I knew there's like a pretty big climbing community on there. And I'm like searching through pages and pages of Reddit, and I finally come across this thread asking for information about this accident that happened in the gorge. And I figure out who the poster is pretty quickly just based on the questions he's asking. I know he's one of my friends from the climbing team here at Cal. And just reading through the threads, I'm like starting to put the pieces together about what happened. So it turns out my friend who was in the gorge was climbing with a new belayer, someone he hadn't climbed with before, someone who may not have been super experienced. And they were, they're leading the single pitch route. And I think it's like 5'8" or something like that. It's well within my buddy's experience level, well within what I know he's able to do. And apparently what happened is he got to the second bolt and he went up to clip, and they think what happened is he got short roped or something happened, and he took a ground fall from the second bolt, and he hit his head on a rock really badly, and he wasn't wearing a helmet. So really bad situation. I think he was unconscious. I think he had a seizure. It was really, really bad, and I've got to commend the people who were there. Thank you to all the people who were there that day who responded to this, because the response was just incredible. Climbers from all around the gorge were like running up the hill trying to get to the access gate to like let the paramedics in, and like making sure that everything was done as quickly and efficiently as possible. So they get my friend out of there. They get him to I think they got him to Reno into ICU, and he was in a coma for a couple days, like really dark, really bad situation. And they weren't sure he was gonna make it. But by some miracle, by some stroke of luck, he pulls out of it. He comes out of the coma. He makes a pretty incredible recovery. So luckily for me and for everybody else, all of his friends and family, he's still with us today. He's back to climbing. I saw him maybe a month after the accident, and he was back on campus at this lecture that a local climber was giving about some big wall adventures or whatever it is. And I'm like, "Man, dude, it's so good to see you. Like, how are you?" And he's like, "Man, I still got some headaches, but I'm doing really well. Like, starting to climb in the gym a little bit again." I'm like, "What, dude? It's been like a month since you were in a coma and you're climbing already, dude." That's dedication. That's super rad. I mean, climbing to him is what it was to me and what I know it was to a lot of people. It's this really powerful experience. So it's something that he got back to pretty much immediately and pretty much with no fear. But what I'm trying to say, what I took from that experience is the importance of wearing a helmet when climbing. Like, this is something I discounted for a long time, and my parents are always giving me a lot of, they're giving me a lot of flack, like, "Why don't you wear a helmet? Why don't you wear a helmet? Like, we'll buy you a helmet." I'm like, "Nah, I don't need a helmet." I guess I'm a little bit older. I got in the climbing game a little bit older, but like I was acting like a cocky little kid, right? Like super sure of himself, super sure of his abilities. But this experience kind of snapped me back to reality. And even before this, like when I was deciding to come out here to Berkeley, I was having this conversation with myself, like, is climbing without a helmet is like taking a gnarly fall and like ending up in a coma, like maybe dying, is that worth it? I've put a lot of time into school. My parents have put a lot of energy and money and all that stuff into my education, and like that could all get thrown away just because I decided not to put a helmet on like a 5/8 sport climb where I get short roped or a hold breaks and I take a ground fall. And maybe the helmet won't 100% save my life, but it's going to increase my chances. And this has been something that I've been really passionate about for the past couple years now, and it's trying to get people, climbers of all abilities, of all ages, to put a helmet on when they're outside, when they're rope climbing. Like, helmet technology has come so far. They're not clunky anymore. They're lightweight. They're pretty comfortable. When I climb with one on, I don't even notice it's there. And I've climbed some pretty hard sport in a helmet now. Like, it's such an easy decision to make, and it's something that's so simple. I really wish people would make that decision more, and that's something that stories like my friends go a long way, I think, towards informing these decisions. And I remember at the same time as his accident, there were a ton of articles in like Climbing Magazine, and I think maybe Crux and Crush, a couple blogs online talking about like people who had been in really serious accidents and hadn't been wearing helmets, or had been wearing helmets and they maybe saved their lives. And so that's been something that I've been doing a lot of thinking about the past couple years, and definitely have reevaluated my decisions and my choices about helmet use. And I hope it's something that other people in the climbing world continue to do as well. Like, not just people just learning to climb or have only been climbing for a couple years, but people who are professionals and who are the ones setting examples for like the next generation of climbers. Media has the ability to really paint a picture and to really inform people about what's cool, what's not cool, what the norm is in the climbing world. And I think if we start seeing more pros climbing with helmets, we start getting more photography, more videos of people climbing in helmets, it's going to do a lot to kind of shift the culture. And I know it's a tough conversation, I know, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight. And I don't want to be the guy at the crag like, yo, you guys got to put a helmet on. I don't want to be like the helmet police at the crag, and I don't think anyone should be that. Ultimately, it's a personal decision. But what I think we should be doing is illustrating these stories, these things where helmets may have saved someone's life, or maybe someone really wished they had a helmet on. I think we should be illustrating those stories to give people the full picture of the decision they're making, because it's not one that should be taken lightly. We're here once, and it'd be a shame to lose this one chance we have on something that could be possibly prevented, and something that could be prevented with something as simple as putting a helmet on when you rope up that day. So, that's just something that's been on my mind for a while. Didn't really know how to get it out there. So this seemed like a good forum to do that in, but I don't know. Cool. Yeah, dude.